There was a time in the beauty community where indie palettes meant getting something fun and colorful for less money. I don't know why we felt like indie makeup was supposed to be more affordable than something that we found at Sephora, but for a while that's how we felt about indie makeup. I don't necessarily think that that should be a true representation of it, but we are sure a long way from that. We are no longer in affordable indie country, and I kind of want to talk about that in this video. This is something that I have been thinking about for a really long time, and something that I realized that I, as a makeup reviewer, have not been spending enough time thinking about. I have been reviewing makeup on YouTube for a decade. Yes, you heard that correctly. 2015 in August, actually, it's quite literally a decade, I uploaded my first YouTube video, and I have since then been doing videos about makeup constantly since then. And I carved out a niche here on YouTube reviewing indie makeup, and specifically colorful indie makeup. I'm wearing a very colorful look today. This look is probably already live. I'll try and remember and leave a link to it down below in case you're interested in seeing how I did this look. And I have definitely seen a big change. And I remember back in the days when, like, what was it, like a $20 Juvia's Place palette was seen as like the norm for what we could expect from indie makeup. I will say, since then, indie makeup has literally taking leaps in what you can expect from packaging, quality, theming, all of those things. And I don't want to say that like we were incorrect about Juvia's Place, because Juvia's Place was great at the time. Juvia's Place is maybe not as innovative and as great now, especially not the older palettes compared to what is on the market. But what I will say is that if the quality has changed, so has the pricing. If you didn't know, like I said, I have been reviewing makeup for a decade, but I also own my own beauty brand. My beauty brand is called Cinch Beauty, and I started my beauty brand, it started 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago actually. That's when I launched my brand. And of course, ever since long before then, I was doing a lot of research on the community and what things cost to produce and all of these things, because there's a lot of things going into producing makeup. And one of the things, of course, that I was looking into was pricing. And like I said, I've been in this community for quite some time, and even though I know indie makeup isn't really that $20 palette from Juvia's Place anymore, I still, when I was doing my calculations of what to charge for my first eyeshadow palette, and which has also been the price for my second eyeshadow palette, when I started calculating and I was like, I need to charge $45 for this palette for me to, you know, actually be able to pay the people who are helping me with the brand, pay for the website, pay for the shipping and the warehouse and the artists that are doing the artwork and the factories and the shipping costs from the factory to the warehouses, all of these things. I was like, $45 is where I need to be to not like lose money and to actually like pay myself a paycheck and all of that. I know people think that the margins are absolutely bananas, but if you are making a high quality product and not cutting corners, I don't think the margins are that. I can speak from my own experience. And when I put that price tag, I was like, is this going to be too much? And I started doing research. Where are other brands? Because even though I knew that indie makeup was much more expensive now than it used to be, I still had that $20 Juvia's Place palette in the back of my head. I'm like, ooh, $45 is a lot. And I will say, and I can say that confidently, the quality of my palette and the quality of like pretty much most of this brand that we're going to talk about today is a more elevated, very much high quality. You're getting a lot of special shades. The mattes are even better now than they used to be. So it's not that I was like, this is the same quality as Juvia's Place. I'm going to stick up my neck and say my palettes have better quality than Juvia's Place. And like I said, pretty much everyone that I mentioned here today as well, at least from like 2016 Juvia's Place, 2017 Juvia's Place. But still, I was like, is $45 too much? And I was starting to do research, and I realized there are almost no affordable indie brands left that are doing what we now see as high quality eyeshadows with good color stories from indie brands that are even under $50. And it really got me thinking, what happened? I probably named this video something along the lines of like how Multichromes ruined indie makeup or something. I don't even know, but that is the working name of this little project when I started saving pictures of palettes with prices, because I was thinking that's the reason. I know a lot of people, at least in the beginning, I should say, when Multichromes started getting on the scene, which was more prevalent the last 6-7 years, we've seen that. People were saying, I cannot wait for this to become affordable. And all the makeup producers were saying, best of luck with that. Because the problem is that the multichrome pigments, the pigment that makes those super shifty shadows where you see more than 2 colors. Duochromes is 2 colors, and then we have multichromes where you can see more than 2 colors. Those pigments are made, if I am not totally mistaken, it is very few, if maybe only one producer of that kind of a pigment, and they're kind of expensive to buy. Which means that when you buy that pigment to put into your makeup, the price automatically goes up, which is why you sometimes feel when drugstore brands or more affordable brands have that kind of pigment in their palettes, somehow it's just not as impactful as when you pay more money for it. Because when you pay more money for it, the brand has the ability to put more of that special pigment into it, so you see more of the shift. And since that kind of makeup became extremely popular, I don't even remember when, but I want to say around 6-ish years ago, the consumers, especially the indie makeup consumers, that's the kind of makeup that they have been looking for. That's what they want in their palettes. They want super shifty, sparkly, very high intensity, special shades. We call them special shades, and I think honestly the term came from the special shades that Pat McGrath used to have in her palettes. Again, those were $129 palettes. I don't even think that those kind of like baked super sparkly shades are made anymore in her palette. I don't think that that's the kind of shadows we're seeing anymore. But since then, we started talking about every kind of shimmer that is not a typical foil metallic or sparkly metallic or just a regular duochrome. It started referring to them as special shades. And those special shades, they're not only special in performance, they're also special in production cost. Because sometimes putting 1 or 2 special shades in a palette will make the palette price jump up 100%. Which makes the people who put more special shades in their palettes have to charge 30, 40, 50, 60. Now we're seeing palettes that are up towards $100. And it makes me think back when Natasha Denona and Pat McGrath came on the market. And we were literally calling it Natasha Denona because the palettes were $129, and some of them, even when she was doing the midi palettes, they're still, I think they're $69, so $70. And I think they were $65 for a bit, but they're still $69, $70 for a palette, and we still talk about that as an expensive brand. But somehow we forget to talk about indie palettes in the same price range as expensive palettes. And that's something that I always hear people say when creators start getting PR, they stop thinking about price. And I will say for me, I still bought a lot of makeup. A lot of the things that you see in my collection, I have bought myself. And I definitely do try to think about the price tag of a palette when I review it. But I didn't really think about it when I was comparing palettes to each other. And that's something that I've been thinking about so much now that I have my own brand, because I chose to put myself at the price range of $45, which means that I am not able to put only special shades in my palette, because if I do that, I'm gonna lose money producing the palettes, because the palette is quite literally going to cost more than $45 to produce, which is why some of the palettes are more expensive. It is what it is. There are some things that makes a palette be more expensive, and definitely putting special shades in there is the main culprit. Another main culprit is how many of the palettes are you able to make. The more you're able to make, the more you can press the price down. That's also a way to get the cost down on the palettes. So bigger indie brands are able to order more palettes, which enables them to put the price down a bit. I'm looking at you, Blend Bunny. I'm looking at you, Glamlight. which is awesome, but a smaller indie brand might not be able to buy as many of a palette, so the price might be a bit higher. But I definitely thought about it with my own palette because it also made me see other people, creators, review my palette and hold my palette up to a palette that was twice the price and say, I wish these had the same shimmers. And I was thinking, well, I could do that, but then they would also be the same price. And it made me think, wait, how am I reviewing makeup? Am I thinking about that when I'm reviewing makeup? And I realized, no, I wasn't. And it also made me realize all those times that people told me, oh, I wish creators would think about prices. I was like, oh, but I do. And I realized, not fully. Not fully. Like, I caught myself in it. And I mean, I'm not saying that there are not creators out there that think about pricing, but it made me realize I thought about pricing, but not to the full extent. So that's why I started also, because I've been saving some things when I've been pictures and prices when I was doing research, of course, for my own brand. But then I started saving recently even more pictures and more prices when I started realizing prices have really gone up on indie makeup. And I want to hear your thoughts about this, and I want to show, maybe even do a list or something, or like, I don't know, a tier list or something where we can talk about the pricing of palettes. I have an editor helping me with this video, so whatever they feel is good, I trust you. Thoughts and prayers though, because I don't envy you.
Sorrows, prayers.
And the job you're going to be doing. Love you. Thank you so much. Let's start with talking about the two brands that we talked about when we talked about expensive versus affordable. And I want to say first, Natasha Denona. We were saying Natasha Denona was an expensive brand. Again, a midi palette today is $69 to purchase. And this is what we were saying. Natasha Denona is an expensive brand. I think we were more talking about it when we were talking about those 100+ palettes, but we still do mention Natasha Denona as an expensive brand. It is definitely in par or even more expensive than some other palettes at Sephora. So I still wanted to use that as a benchmark because I know that I myself have used Natasha Denona as a benchmark for an expensive brand. I also wanted to use ColourPop as the benchmark for an affordable brand because for the longest time we were saying that ColourPop, which you can get a 16-pan palette from ColourPop for $24 today, which again still I feel is pretty affordable, and we used to talk about ColourPop being you can get good quality for this price tag. I will say I don't think the quality with ColourPop is as amazing as it used to be. I don't know what has happened, but I still would say this is a benchmark for getting a colorful, somewhat interesting palette at a lower price tag. So I thought that that would be like, let's start with the benchmark. I am going to be including some brands in here that I haven't used, brands that I have used, brands that I'm very familiar with, and also some brands that I have used but not for a long time. I hope that that makes sense. So the first one is going to be a brand that I have used but not for a long time, and that is Terra Moon. And the newest Terra Moon palette is $57. All of this is going to be in US dollars. Some of them I have done some kind of like, I've tried to like update the price and make it into US dollars just so that we can compare them to each other. I'm living in the US right now, so right now I'm thinking in US dollars, but all of these palettes are probably available to ship all over the world, but I'm just making it US dollars for comparison's sake. So this is $57, and this is a 12-pan palette. And again, I don't think that this is an unreasonably high price for a 12-pan indie palette, especially when we're going to start comparing them to other things. And Terra Moon definitely does a lot of special shades. The next one is going to be a brand that I haven't tried myself, and this is Question Beauty, and this is $69 for a 10-pan. That's the same price as a Natasha Denona palette, but you're getting like almost just half the shades. So this is luxury. It just got me thinking. I haven't tried this brand. Maybe they're absolutely amazing, but that is a really high price tag. And again, I don't think I would have thought about it had I not started my own brand. And I mean, I'm literally like, I'm shaming myself here. This is not me shaming brands. This is not me shaming other creators. I'm shaming myself. If I hadn't started my own brand, I can honestly tell you, I don't know if I would have said, wow, that's really expensive. And isn't that crazy? Because $69 for 10 shades is pretty expensive. Then we have Sydney Grace. This is $52, and this is a 15 pan palette. I do think that Sydney Grace presses their own eyeshadow still, which does increase cost because you are not able to do as many shadows in a short amount of time as you would if you were more like mass producing them, which is the reason why a lot of indie brands have stopped pressing themselves and instead gone into labs to recreate their formulas, because it is just a little bit more price competitive. This, I am pretty sure, does not have any special shades in there, but Sydney Grace has a very solid formula. Great mattes, great shimmers, great foils, but I don't think you're getting any special shades in this one. Then we have, and this is Titanium Foxes. I have never used this brand. This is a brand that people have been asking me to use, and this is also 15 pans, and this is $67.59. This is a European brand, so yeah, the conversion is a little bit all over the place. Do with that information as you will. I do think there are special shades in this one. I'm not 100% sure if all the shimmers are special, but I also will say that there are more mattes than shimmers in here. And 68, again, we are again in the Natasha Denona price range. I think Natasha Denona, by the way, has amazing quality. And also to remember, when you're selling in a big retailer like Ulta and Sephora take 50% in commission. So already 50% of the palette, which is half of 69, is going to Sephora. So you only have $34.50 to produce a palette on. So, and that also includes the very probably expensive packaging Natasha Denona has. But again, then Natasha Denona has the advantage to be able to produce a lot of units, which probably gets the cost down. I think this is one of the things that probably indie brands has against them, not only like quantity, but also packaging. Usually the packaging is kind of lacking when it comes to indie brands because they didn't invest money into that. Then we have Wicked Widow. This is also a 16 pan palette, and this is $60. This palette that I'm showing here is a collaboration that they did with The Crow, the movie. So they're probably also gonna have to pay, well, probably, I can almost promise you that they're gonna have to pay fees to whoever is holding the franchising rights to that movie as well, which is also what's probably putting the price up. But again, would I have batted an eyelash at $60 a couple of years ago? Probably not. Probably not. But again, that is Sephora prices. Oh, again, and then I put up, because I did put in my own palette because I was comparing it. This is the latest palette from my brand. This is 45. This is a 16 pan palette. This palette has one multichrome and then two duochrome toppers and some metallics. And again, this is a way to keep the price a little bit more competitive, is to only put a couple of special shades in there to keep the pricing down a little bit. But yeah, that's something that I've talked about before. I could definitely do all shades, special shades, but then my palette would probably also be $69. I also have Simply Posh Cosmetics in here. This is $55, and the reason why this one is $55 because this one has quite a few shades. This is 18 shades, but there's one row of special shimmers and 2 rows of mattes, and that is most probably why it's 55 and not 75, is that it is two rows of mattes and one of shimmer and not vice versa. Again, to keep the pricing a little bit competitive, and also Simply Posh is a smaller indie brand. And then we have Unearthed Cosmetics, and this is I think this is the Just a Taste palette. This is also 18 shades. This is $74, so this is more than a Natasha Denona palette, and I'm pretty sure that all of the shades are very, very sparkly, and quite a few of these shades are considered special shades that have more expensive pigments in there. And I also think this is a 50-50 split between shimmers and mattes. Shimmers are more expensive to produce than mattes, which does get the price up a bit. So it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, you're paying $74, but you're also getting if you're into special shades, you're getting like very exciting formulas. It's just, I don't know why I wasn't thinking, put that on a t-shirt. I don't know why I wasn't thinking. Then we have Sigma. I think probably this one, I knew Sigma isn't a budget brand. Sigma has never been a budget brand, but I was honestly a little bit surprised when I saw that their 14 pans were $65 because they do not do special shades in their palettes. Again, you need to be the price range that you need to be. I also do know that Sigma is sold in brick and mortar, so they probably do have to take that into consideration when they are pricing their palettes. So I would say Sigma is pretty much pricing their palettes like a mainstream brand would price their palettes. You also get a brush in their palette, which again I feel is very 2016, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but we used to get brushes in all the palettes that we bought, but now we don't anymore. And I don't know if people prefer it or not. I don't need actually or want brushes in my palettes, but I do think it's pretty cool that they're still doing it. Then we have P. Louise, and this is an extremely huge palette. I have not tried P. Louise eyeshadows. This, I don't even know how many pans this is, but this is a huge palette. It is $64.50 US, which is like $65. So this is comparatively a pretty affordable palette in the grand scheme of things, because you're getting quite a lot of shades for $65. I don't think that any of these shades are a special shade though. I think these are probably duochrome toppers and high intensity metallics, and the bulk of the shadows are mattes, which again is a way to get the product cost down. But this is the kind of palettes that you can do when you don't put special shades in there. Again, I haven't tried the quality, so I have no idea about the quality. And again, this is Glamlight. $38 for the Lord of the Rings collab. They probably paid a pretty penny for that franchise, but because they are producing in the tens of thousands, they are able to get the cost down quite a lot. I think that sometimes we think indie brand is indie brand is indie brand, but there's definitely differences between indie brands and indie brands. Glamlight is a big brand. They're probably selling more units than a lot of Sephora brands. So they are able to keep the cost down because they're producing so many. $38 for a 20 pan palette is bonkers. These are very high intensity, those kind of putty metallics that on me don't crease. They're putty metallics, but they're more like super shocks. They're not that super oily emollient. So they're a putty, but not oily. I hope that makes sense. They're usually very high intensity shimmers. I especially know this palette because I own it, but they're not. They might do duochromes, but they do not do multichromes, which again is another way to keep the cost down because they're probably paying a pretty penny for the franchising. This is another brand that you have been asking me to review, but I haven't because you can't be reviewing everything. This is Mika's Beauty Shop. I'm pretty sure that this is a EU-based brand. This is $76 for a 12 pan palette. And I'm sure the shimmers are incredible. For that price tag, I'm sure they're incredible. They might even be a super, super small brand, and that might be the cost. But $76 is very expensive. I'm sure the quality is great, but I'm just like, wow, imagine a small indie brand charging $76 for a palette back in 2016. We would have shown up with pitchforks. And I'm not even saying that they don't deserve to charge that, because again, if that's what it costs to produce this palette, they're proud of it and people are buying it, then that's the correct pricing. I'm just saying how our mindset has changed, because it's not just inflation. It's also our mindset where we are willing to pay for makeup, for special shades. Jolie Cosmetics, this is a palette. This is quite a lot of shades, and this is $57. And I don't know if these are special shades or not, but also this one is a smidgen more matte heavy, which helps with the pricing. Again, this might also be a bigger indie brand. This is, I'm pretty sure, UK based. So that might be a way to keep the cost down. We also have Clarity Cosmetics. This is $60 for a, what is this? This is 8, 16, 20 pan for $60. Not outrageous. Not outrageous. Also, Clarity does press your own shadows, which again makes you be unable to make as many palettes in a short amount of time, and you do need to charge for the work that you're putting in as well, but you are getting hand pressed shadows. I do know that they like revamped their formula like a year or so ago, and I have tried 2 palettes from them since, and they've been really nice palettes, and they have had if I'm not mistaken, I think both of the palettes had one shade that was a little bit more special, and then just really high intensity, like foiled metallics. This palette here that I'm showing you, I haven't tried. Then we have Gloss Gods. Gloss Gods had this is a 15-pan palette for $67. Gloss Gods is a Swedish indie brand. This one does have special shades. Very high intensity, sparkly multichromes, and that is why it is $67 for a 15-pan. Again, that's a Natasha Denona price tag. And I think I just needed to rewire my brain. Do I think it's not worth that? That's not what I'm saying. I'm just surprised to see that there are so few brands that are even under $50 at this point. Cryptin Cosmetics is a brand that a lot of people have been asking me to review, and this is one of their newer palettes. This one is an 18-pan for $67.10. Again, I had to do some conversion because this is not a US-based brand. This is Sunset's Symphony, and I can even see just on the pans here that they're showing me that this is a split. It's 50% mattes, 50% shimmers, and they are most definitely special multichromes. And that's just the cost. That's just the cost of it. If you want to get special shades, it's gonna have to be Natasha Denona price tag. Can you tell that I'm like, me saving these pictures, me thinking about this, it really got me thinking. It really did get me thinking. I don't even know if any of the ones that we have looked at so far have been under $50. Jolie Cosmetics was close with the 57, and that was a big palette. Of course, Glamlight. Simply Posh was close. My brand is 45. Sydney Grace is 52. Terra Moon was 57. Oden's Eye is 43.90. And Oden's Eye has always been a brand that I've always thought is really fairly priced. They will do usually a 50-50 split between shimmers and mattes. They'll usually put one or two special shades in their palettes, and they put a lot of thought into their packaging as well, making it like the full experience. And I've always thought that they have really nice quality. I've always enjoyed their palettes, and I've always thought that the price tag of the palettes have been pretty good as well. Same with Nomad Cosmetics. This was the Route 66 palette. This is $49. You get quite a lot of shades. This one is 18 shades for $49. Nomad Cosmetics is usually the same. They have a nice split between mattes and shimmers. They're under $50. They'll usually put maybe one special shade in there, just something that really like stands out from the rest, and then just really solid other shades, which again, I really prefer, but it also enables them to put that kind of a price tag. The Tones of Turd, which again, I had to put in this palette because I think this palette is just so fun. This is by Glaminatrix Cosmetics. This is $64, and this is a 15-pan palette with one row of very special shades. These are highly intensive, super cool shades, and $64 is the price you're gonna have to pay to get those extremely intense, very special shades. This palette is really high quality, but again, so is the price tag. Lethal Cosmetics has this palette that I tried and I really enjoyed. This is $54, which I think is a really fair price. This is 15 shades, and I know that this one had a couple of very high intensity shimmers that were really interesting. I don't know if they were like true like multichromes in there, but this was a very intense and fun, high quality palette. Again, for $55, which I think is fair. I also want to mention Lunar Beauty. Lunar Beauty is an indie brand that's owned by Manny MUA, and he does very high quality palettes. They are usually a little matte heavy, really nice quality like sparkly metallics, and then sometimes he'll put in a special shade. This palette that is the Moon Shroom palette, I'm pretty sure this is 2 rows of mattes and 1 row of metallics. Quite a lot of shades. I mean, this is an 18 shade palette. None of these are special shades, and it's also under $50. This palette is bomb, by the way. I love this palette. I think it's such a good palette. Gourmande Girls has this palette that is a 15-pan palette. This is $57, and it is matte heavy, and I'm pretty sure there is a multichrome in this palette, and there's very high intensity metallics that I know for a fact are very expensive to produce. It's just fascinating. Again, like I said, that this is just the price of makeup right now. This is just what we're paying for makeup. Fantasy Cosmetica is a brand that I also initially thought of when I was thinking of palettes that are a little bit more on the affordable side. They have this palette, which is, what is it called? This was a Harvest of Souls. This was my favorite palette of 2024. I put this as my #1 palette of the year. This is the Harvest of Souls. This is a 16-pan palette for $51, and you do get some special shades in here. I think this is a very good palette. They also have a smaller palette. Let me see if I can find the smaller palette amongst here. I did put that one in too, because this is $38.99, and this is the Monk palette. It just came out recently. Love this one. Such great quality, high intensity, very special shades. I don't remember if they're like multichromes, but they're very high intensity metallics, very good quality. And this is under $40. It is a 9-pan. That's why I wanted to put in the 16-pan as well, because of course making a smaller palette makes it a little bit more affordable. But I still think that Fantasy Cosmetica is definitely one of the indie brands also that I was thinking of. I'm like, they're very competitively priced, which I'm very impressed with. The Drops of Fantasy by DD Signature, this one has extremely high intensity special shades in the middle, a middle row, 2 rows of mattes, 1 row of shimmers. This is a 15-pan palette, $48.99. Again, it is under $50, and I really love the quality of this one. And I didn't even think of thinking of DD Signature as a brand that also had palettes under $50, but that's something that I need to remember. Here is Blend Money Cosmetics. Like I said, Blend Money Cosmetics has the advantage of being a little bit of a bigger brand, so they can order a bigger quantity of palettes. There are some smaller indie brands that are probably ordering palettes in the hundreds, and then there are bigger brands that are ordering in the tens of thousands. Of course, that's going to make a big difference in the pricing that the lab is going to offer you. This is the Beauty Below, I think this is called. Was it called that? It was the spooky mermaid theme palette. This is $45 for a pretty large palette. It's a pretty large palette. It's 24 shades. I'm pretty sure that there are not any multichromes in here, but I am pretty sure there's a couple of duochromes in here. But again, very high intensity shades. The shimmer quality is somewhat similar to Glamlight's shimmer quality, which is that it is that putty quality, that it's very sparkly, but it's not super oily or emollient. If you are wondering like what kind of shimmers are there, I would say that Glamlight and Blend Money are similar in more ways than one. Then we have Cleona. This is the Archeo palette that they came out with last year. This is $74.90. This is a Canadian brand, and I did make sure to see that this was not in Canadian dollars. This is in USD. This is also a hand-pressed palette, and the shades are very special. I mean, Cleona is known for making very special shades, and there was definitely a few of the shimmers in here that are extremely special, which is bringing up the cost, together with, of course, it being a hand-pressed palette. This is also one of the, when we think about brands that are able to make their palettes a little bit more affordable, Cosmic Beauty always comes up. This is the Lovers palette that came out for Valentine's Day this year, and this is $36 for, how many shades is this? 20 colored palette. It is usually matte heavy, and usually there is 1 or 2 special shades in there, but it's very high intensity metallics, and usually their multichromes are really amazing. The mattes are great. I absolutely love Cosmic Beauty. It's one of my absolute favorite indie brands, and they're UK based, and the fact that they can offer the 20-pan palettes for $36, they have definitely cracked the code. They're probably also ordering quite a lot of palettes because I know they're definitely an indie brand that gets a lot of orders and gets a lot of love. Let's just put it like that. They've definitely, it's a brand that people really have discovered and really have loved the past couple of years, for good reason. It's a great brand, but they've always been fairly affordable. But I also think that, I know their first palette that made it really big, Serenity, had 1 special shade in there, and I know their past palette have a couple of more special shades, and I think that could be because they're now able to order more palettes when they're making their first order, putting the price down a little bit, being able to put more shades in there. for the same cost basically. But I will say this is definitely a brand that has broken the code somewhere. $36 for a 20 pan palette that has usually like 2 special shades in there. That's quite honestly very impressive. Very, very, very impressive. Then we have Adept Cosmetics. So Adept Cosmetics is a brand that is very shimmer heavy in their palettes. They usually have at least 2/3 of only special shades and then a few mattes to go in the palette. This one is the palette that I just got. I don't even remember what this one is called, but this is their newest palette, and this is $79. And there is only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mattes. And then there are 10 multichromes, sparkly special shades, and that's the price that we have to pay for that. Again, that's more expensive than Natasha Denona. Is the metallics better than Natasha Denona? Definitely more exciting special shades for sure. I do prefer the Natasha Denona mattes though, I will say. I'm a matte girly. I think that Adept Cosmetics makes good mattes, but not amazing mattes. But the pricing is because of the amount of multichromes that are in here, making them a pretty expensive indie brand. And I remember when they started releasing palettes, and I remember people thinking, that's a high price tag for an indie brand. And I feel like Adept Cosmetics definitely was one of those brands that made us rethink what is an acceptable price tag for an eyeshadow palette. And I don't even know if I mean that in a negative way, because they also raised the expectations of what people want in a shimmer. And I also think that Adept has been able to change their shimmers, because their shimmers were extremely creasy there for a bit. And now I feel like they've gotten, I don't want to say better, but they've been able to make special shades that people that are prone to creasing, like me with my hooded eyes, also can use. Bella Beauté Bar is another brand that is known for their incredible shimmer and multichrome and special shade quality. Usually every shimmer in their palette is a special shimmer, and that's why it's $75. You're getting special shimmers that people are requesting, but then the cost is $75. This one is also a 20 pan palette. Ardent Cosmetics usually does 16 pan palettes. This is the Arcana palette, which was the latest one they came out with. It's a UK-based indie brand, and they usually do, I want to say, in their shimmers, it's usually at least a couple of special shades. And they're usually very high intensity shimmers. Even if they're not like a multichrome, they're usually still seen as like special, because they're usually very slick, very high intensity, very sparkly. $63 for a 16 pan. It's not unreasonable in this day and age for a 16 pan indie palette, but it is also almost the cost of Natasha Denona. I just wonder what we would have said in 2016 if a palette with 50% multichromes, 50% mattes came out and people are like, oh, it's $70. What do you think we would have said? Because I know we would have raised an eyebrow in 2016. Again, inflation is a thing, but not that much. Not that much. We also have Game Beauty. This is this is a collab, so you're gonna have to pay for franchising fees. This is the collab with Street Fighter. This is kind of a big palette. I don't even know how many shades. 1, 2, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It's like 18 shades. And this one is $65, and it is a collab, so it's going to be a little bit more expensive. I don't know if there's necessarily any special shades, but I do know that the shimmers, metallics, are very like high intensity. And let's double check, because I have been referring so much to Juvia's Place, I didn't even think of that. Let's see what a palette from Juvia's Place is nowadays. What is a Juvia's Place palette? Because I was saying, oh, $20, $20. I'm like, is that even true? Okay, so if you get the 16 pan palette from Juvia's Place without any special shades, $25. The Saharan palette, $20. That's what I remember it being. Nubian Earth, $20. Yeah, that's what I remember it being. But if we look at the Culture 2 palette, which is this like bigger palette that I know for a fact has at least one multichrome in it, it is $38. It is a bigger palette, it is $38, but $38 compared to $20 is still almost double the price. And I don't think it's because it is double the size. I think they doubled the size to justify the price because they put some special shades in there. Because usually, if you have a palette that's 20 shades and it's $20, making the palette to 10 shades does not make the palette to be $10. It's probably still going to be at least $15 because the startup costs and of course the ingredients, it's not necessarily half. If you make half the cost is not because of half the pigments are being used. I hope that makes sense. So I do think that one of the reasons why their newer palettes are more expensive because they put the special shades in there, they also made them bigger to justify the price hike, because I do think that expectations of palettes are so different now from what they were when I started reviewing makeup. The makeup that I loved in 2015, 2016, 2017, we would not have raised an eyebrow today for that palette. We would have been like, where's the special shades? Where's the sparkles? I understand that this is $20, but I would have paid more than double if I could have just had special shade. Our expectations and our willingness to pay for those expectations have surely changed throughout this decade. And it's one of those things that have changed so much and like just changed a little by little, that now we are so far from where indie makeup started that we can't even see the starting point anymore. And I don't even know if this video made sense or if you agree with me. I just wanted to go through some of the things that I've been finding and just show you where we are now and just think back where we started. How did you feel about the indie community now? Do you miss where it was? Would you prefer it to go back to those colorful, vibrant, just mattes, metallics, and a duochrome for less money? Or are you happy that we are where we are now and you don't mind paying extra? I will say I'm happy where we are now and I don't mind paying extra, but I also am in the team where I'm like, I don't need all the shadows to be special shadows. I prefer, if not all of them are, because I don't think we need that in every look. And I also prefer, again, clearly you can see because that's what I did with my brand, but I prefer when a palette can be like Fantasy Cosmetica, Cosmic Beauty, Nomad Cosmetics, and just be a little bit more approachable. I do prefer that, or Oden's Eye, because I feel like it just makes it just a little bit more approachable. I would love to hear your thoughts. And again, don't be mad at me. These are just my findings. Don't shoot the messenger. Just things that I have been thinking about a lot lately. If you want to see more videos like this, do let me know. If you want to see more makeup videos, don't forget to subscribe. I hope you're having an amazing, amazing day, and I will see you soon again in a new video.